we lined up correctly. Let me get this, make sure that we're in the frame just right so you can see what I'm doing. Hi, I'm Kat with Scorpion Forge, and this should be part 8 of a series on making these forged rings. As you can see, I made 2 of them that are bent and ready to solder. I showed you in the previous video in part 7 how to do the how I bend them and I hammer them around. I use like a round steel bar and some sockets and things for a mandrel, and I also adjust it with the vise, using the vise as a press. And so so that these are as close together or as close as possible. But in this particular application, what I'm doing, because I wanted there to be a little tension on that to make that gap even smaller and almost non-existent, is I'm using vice grips, like for body work sort of stuff for sheet metal. And so I have this pinched in here. It's kind of tricky to adjust that right, and it takes a little while, so I preset that one. And this one, all I have to do is put the flux on it and solder it. This one, I'll show you what I do before we flux it and solder it. Is I got a little steel wire brush, and that way I want to come here and brush off the ends where we're going to do the soldering. We want this joint to be as clean as possible. Yeah, we don't want it to have any like debris or forge scale or oxidation that can interfere with the solder sticking. All right, so we're just doing that to show you that we have to clean that up. And then we're using this is silver bearing solder. This is the larger diameter. You can also get the thinner diameter, but this is just what I happen to have right now. It's silver bearing plumbing solder. It's used for potable water systems, so it's safe to the touch. When it's cold, of course. Yeah, it's solid. It's not rosin core. It's it's lead free. There's no lead in it, so you won't get lead poisoning. The lead solder is generally used in electronics, whereas for plumbing applications, you generally want your either silver bearing solder, or there's some other plumbing solders that aren't silver bearing, but silver bearing is good because if you're working, well, particularly with silver and copper, it binds better, and so brass being an alloy of copper, it just works better. It costs a little more, but it's good stuff. Using some paste flux. Because flux, what that does is it's a substance like that you brush on. In this case, you can brush it on. And what it does is it's sort of like a waxy substance that melts and forms an oxygen resistant, an air, keeps the air out of the joint while the solder is in contact with it, while the molten solder is in contact with it, so that it can bind the metal to metal instead of with no air oxidation, because oxidation on the surface of metals, especially copper or silver, is no bueno for the solder to bond correctly. So that's why we have to clean the joints as best we can. I've already cleaned that one up, so all I have to do to it is apply the solder so that it gets down in the crack there. I put it on both sides, so it's got a generous amount of the solder, or the flux, excuse me. And then set it up right there so I can get it put it in an angle that I can hit it with the torch easily, and hit it with the solder too. And I've got a propane torch right here, which is just a regular old Bernzomatic propane torch. You can also use MAP gas, burns hotter and it's more expensive, but regular old propane works for this because this has a relatively low melting point. It doesn't need to be super, super hot like if you're, like cutting torch hot. This is just propane torch. It's like your gas stove, essentially. And I'd have to look up to what the exact temperature ranges are. But for most of what I'm doing, regular old propane is fine. And I've got one of the self-starting thing. So what I do is I just turn my valve on and make sure I have good ventilation. Got the windows open and the door open and everything like that, so I don't get carbon monoxide. And then just push the little electric start on it. Get my flame going. And then what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to warm this ring up until that flux melts. I want it to absorb some heat because you want to use the torch on the metal of the ring, and then I want to come in with the solder after that's hot because I don't want to directly blast my solder with that. And I'm just using the length of the solder as a good way to. And it didn't stick, but there's things we can do. And it also has a tendency, if you have this going too much, if you don't adjust it, it can blow itself out with too much gas. You gotta get just right. And sometimes if the solder doesn't stick on the first attempt, if it just balls up like that, that means that you don't have enough heat in the metal and you don't have enough flux on it. I want to put it here so the gravity will take it down through the gap. Because you just want to melt that little bitty tip of the solder. We want this to conduct. And brass isn't quite as conductive as copper. There we go. You can see that. All right, I'll show you. It's still smoking. And I'll set the torch out of the way. But we got a big blob of solder, but that's okay. I'll just reuse that solder later. But now, you see, this is like that. And you see the ring is a little deformed because it's under pressure from this. But when I spring the trap on it, it should snap back. Because we want that to solidify before I lift the pressure off of it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just quench the whole thing in my quench water here. Can you see me? Yes, you can see me. And then spring the trap on it there. And don't touch that because that's really hot over there. But now, you have the ring, and it actually deformed it a little more than I would have liked, but that's okay. That comes out in the grind. I can grind that down when I grind this off on the grinder over here. So now let's try the other one. And we might use some of this extra solder to not waste it, because this stuff is expensive. You know, a roll like this costs like $20, so we want to make sure that we don't waste any. So, you know, when you have lanyap like that, you know, you try to use it. It's possible to do that. So first thing we got to do is make sure these are cold enough to touch. Yeah, they're all right. Won't burn me too bad. Because, yeah, safety placed. And I'm going to... Alright, I'm going to have to adjust this because it won't clamp shut, so I'm going to have to adjust this open just a little bit on the... Alright, needs to close a little so I can fine tune this. Because each one is not exactly the same. Alright, there we go. We already cleaned that, so now we just got to flux it. And our flux brush is right here. Get a little bit of flux. Nice little gob. And then we want to put that on there. It's better not to have water droplets in it. I think I got some water on it from my fingers. But so it'll sizzle and pop. And I'm wearing eye protection, so it won't get me in the eye. Hopefully. Alright. Lots of dab of flux on there. And then what I can do is I have this big old blob of solder that kind of got away. What we'll do, well, actually I'll use the smaller bit because it really only needs about that much. But you don't want to set it on there because the wind off of the torch will blow it away and it won't be in the right place that you need it. So in this case, you can't set your little dot of solder on there to begin with. So we got to keep the ring up. And a lot of the heat goes into the flip of the thing. Yeah, you can see it sizzling a little bit. Gotta hold it up, hold the torch upright to get it to not blow out. Tweak with it a little. Throw a little more solder on there. And it oils up pretty good. I'm trying to heat the other end of the ring. Let's see if I can get it to. I'll plug it. This may take a minute. Soldering is not an exact science. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Oh, there we go. Got a little bit of melt in it. I might be able to bend it this way. Get it to seal up. Come on, baby. You can do it. I don't like to have that much in there because it's hard to file it out of there. Get this and scrape it out of there because that looked ugly. I'll file that off later. Don't want to burn myself on the tippity tip of that. Ooh. That's interesting. Alright, so I quenched that. I'm going to set that there because that's still hot, very, very hot. And I got a bit of solder that did that, but that's okay. I just grind that off easy. Or actually, I can just snap that bit off with my fingers. So I quenched it, it's good to go. So we just have to round this one, and it's a little oblong too, but we'll straighten that out in the grinding process, which is the next video.